Before we get into the testing portion of the video, I'm going to talk a little bit about Kaveh and a number of the challenges associated with using him. If you want to skip straight to the combat, I'll have a timestamp at the bottom for you. Kaveh has a whole lot of problems. The first problem is that no one has him. The second, third, fourth, fifth, or maybe sixth or seventh problems are, his mediocre Dendro application. He's got standard ICD. He can only use his skill once every 6 seconds. It's the majority of his application. He has no control over bloom ownership most of the time. When you're in a Kaveh bloom party, freeze bloom or otherwise, Kaveh only does a small portion of bloom ownership damage. Basically, each bloom is activated by individual characters, but because the bloom ownership is dependent on what the aura is at the time, the majority of the time, Hydro units are going to own the blooms because Hydro on Dendro is a reverse reaction. It consumes less elemental gauge. Essentially, if you have a Dendro aura and you add Hydro to it, it'll take only part of the aura. Whereas if you have a Hydro aura and you put Dendro on top of it, it'll consume essentially the entire aura unless it's a very strong aura. That's all you really need to know about it, is that it's very hard to keep up a Hydro aura where a Dendro character can create blooms. He only has 12 seconds of uptime during his burst with a 20-second total cooldown. So he's kind of in this position where he has both high field requirements and not enough time on field. Kaveh has absolutely massive energy needs. He can pretty much only operate with Favonius Greatsword. He needs a little bit of crit for that. He can have Favonius on his party members. He can have a second Dendro, but he still needs an absolute minimum of 150% total energy recharge. Like I operate probably about 180, 190 in this team I'm about to show you, and he just barely gets by because everybody else is using Favonius. He has anti-synergy with Hyperbloom and Burgeon teams. Essentially, if you use your skill and you claim blooms, instead of your Hyperbloom or Burgeon trigger getting credit for those blooms, it'll just be whoever created the blooms in the first place. So you're essentially punished for using his skill. And he doesn't have terribly good synergy with being an on-field Dendro applicator in the first place, because if you have Nahida or you have Alhaitham, you already have superior upgrades to him. Even Baiju is generally a superior upgrade for an on-field driver compared to him. Now, those are all premium characters, and if the off chance you have Kaveh and you don't have any of those, then use Kale, I guess, because she's honestly better half the time anyway. The entire philosophy behind his design is that he's a regular bloom enabler who is kind of a replacement for a healer. He can actually do quite a bit of healing by getting hit by Dendro cores, and he solves some of the problem with Dendro cores taking too long to explode by using his skill to speed that up on some occasions. You can't really do much of that since his skill has a 6-second cooldown until you get to C6 and really speed up the process of exploding Dendro cores early. Anyway, let's get on with the show. For these tests, we will be trying to keep his identity as a pure bloom enabler. So he's going to be the one hopefully detonating these cores and having ownership of these cores. If you watch the auras carefully, you can see that the enemy is affected by a Dendro aura quite a bit more than we'd like. What we'd like is for it to be under a Hydro aura the majority of the time so that Kaveh is the one causing blooms. But no matter how hard I try, it's just not in the cards. We'll cut this off early, because once he gets airborne, it's the Yelan show. The Primo Geovishap is a fantastic punching dummy. Problem is he just punches back, so Singcho really helps out. Even with Kaveh's interruption resistant that's on his burst, he still gets knocked around very easily. Here we can see that an electric or pyro Geovishap is going to cause Hyperbloom or Burgeon, which is not what we want. Once again, too much of the Bloom ownership was shared by the Hydro characters, so let's try again with a different setup. Furina's Hydro application is respectable, but it's a little bit wonky because each of her pets has a different internal cooldown and they attack at different speeds. So you can't get a lot of consistency, and we're going to see that in this application. Kaveh gets some consistent Bloom ownership here, but without C6 to kind of even it out, we don't get to see. One last attempt, except with a Geovishap that will not cause Hyperbloom. Kaveh's ownership of blooms is a little better on this run versus the last, but I do want to say that using his skill in the middle of his burst will end up applying too much Dendro at once, and you'll have a tough time getting back to Hydro Aura. Well, victory. Or is it? Okay, I've had enough of using an area damage team for boss killing because it's not working out very well, so we're going to try it against a group of enemies. In conclusion, the most important thing I can say is if I ever get C6 Kaveh, if they release him again, I'll do some additional testing because he'll definitely be able to do more consistent Bloom activation, because Bloom is just a terrible reaction without adding Hyperbloom or Burgeon. Overall, he's a very hard to use character. If you love him, he can be used, but he is definitely one of the most challenging characters, if not the most challenging character to use, along with, you know, some characters like Candace or Xinyan. But I hope you enjoyed the video today. Kitten says to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll try to come out with some more stuff in the future. Peace.